This Marquee Dragon video is sponsored by Shattered Crystal, game codes, and items.
My name is Osmo Ahvelampi and I'm CTO at Sulake. What we do is social places where people meet and interact. Most people know us from Habbo, which is an international community and playful world for teenagers. The orange countries are where we're at, 32 countries in the world. So we've been around for 10 years and collected quite a lot of traffic in the time. And Sulake turned 10 years 2 weeks ago, so that was a big thing for us. Habbo will turn 10 in a couple of months' time. We did take 5 months or so to implement the first version. So that's basic statistics. 172 million registered Habbo characters, 16 million unique browsers per month, which makes us one of the bigger, but not the biggest anymore. 2 million visits a day, that's a pretty good figure that I'm pretty proud of. So what I'm going to talk about today is basically a combination of three things. First of all, some basics on just why are we doing one thing continuously over and over, and what's the ROI on just keeping improving on what you have already. Then about a technical transition that we made in the last 2 years, converting from one platform to another. And if you want to, I can also talk about Facebook transitions as well, but I would rather spend time on talking about player-to-player economics and secondary markets. And basically what I'm covering here is the years 8 and 9 of Habbo. Now we're at the year 10. Actually, we are still at the year 10. Anyway, so Habbo is many things. It began as a meeting place and still is a meeting place, but most of all it's an environment where teams create their own places and organize their games, events, and generally speaking they have fun with other players. So it is a game, but it's more of a game that the players create themselves. We create the environment and they will come up with what they want to do. So it's a social environment, and it's been a social environment from the very beginning. So we came up with the term social play sometime before the world started talking about social games. And for us, it is social, but it's also about play, which to us is something other than goal-oriented gaming. So play in the sense of what kids do, but Habbo is for teenagers. So I was here last time 2 years ago, and back then I was talking about how we converted the company to do agile development all around, and how we even converted our business management into agile thinking, and used that capability to basically reinvent how Habbo connected to the rest of the web, which helped us at the time. And we were pretty happy about the progress at the time, but there was one major problem, and that was that we required Shockwave player, which was losing relevance on the market quite fast. So it was pretty clear that we would have to switch technologies, and basically exactly 2 years ago we started the project for switching platforms. So what we had evaluated essentially was based on three factors. First of all, we are about easy access, easy play. It has to be browser-based. There cannot be installations, and it has to be easy for users to get into. That's the number one primary factor. We did consider developer productivity as well and availability of skilled developers. Clearly it's important, but it was nowhere near as important as the first factor. Anyway, we employed practically all the skilled Lingo developers in Finland for Shockwave, and Director is not the state of the art in productivity. So that was an important consideration. And finally, we did care about performance, but not in the general traditional sense of gaming. We cared about performance because our users have relatively modest computers, and we want Habbo to work well on modest computers as well. So we considered Java. Our server side is in Java, so that would be an easy fit from that point of view. We considered Unity player. We considered a couple of other technologies, but essentially we went down to Flash because it's install base and penetration of the market. Recently, of course, you hear about HTML5 and all kinds of other stuff, but practically speaking, even today, Java is the Flash is the only really available platform if you want to distribute a rich game on the internet. Otherwise, you're going down the install route. And of course, it was only with Flash 9 and ActionScript 3 that it became relevant, because earlier than that, the performance just wasn't there. So the other interesting thing that we did consider at the time is are we still going to continue working on Habbo, or are we going to reinvent ourselves and do something completely different and let Habbo be as the cash cow of the company? We decided that we're going to upgrade. We're going to convert all of the user base of Habbo to use another technology instead of create something new, and try to make a faithful replica of Habbo Hotel with new technology. So the question there really is aren't we just risking our entire business by switching technologies on something that users are already happy with, instead of creating a second leg for the company, so to speak? And we did consider that seriously, but at the end of the day, we estimated that improving what we already have is going to be a much bigger payoff, certainly in the first 12 months, even though it takes a long time to develop a software like this. But definitely in the long run as well. And besides, Habbo Hotel really isn't just one product. It's a portfolio of different complex experiences interconnecting to each other, and we would be able to retain most of the experiences. We'd change some others, we'd drop some things away, and we'd improve significantly on other features, but we would be able to deliver a better experience doing Habbo all over again. So the basic tools for actually evaluating that boil down to 3 different criteria, and this for anyone running an online game, these are probably really basic material, but in case someone in the room isn't running an online game yet, here's a primer. So what you want to measure is 3 different things: conversion rate, retention rate, and monetization rate. So conversion rate is essentially just looking at how many of your new users convert to returning traffic. There are a couple of other conversion rate metrics or definitions out there, but this is one that seems to work. So on our basic math, at the end of 2008, we had about 10 million users coming into the service every month. And most of those are, of course, returning traffic. But let's assume, for argument's sake, that there were 3 million new visitors every month. And those would, because Habbo is really easy to register, they would register a character there and try the service out. And now, of course, not everyone likes what they see. That never happens. Typically, according to what I've been able to dig up, the industry sees something between 10 and 30%, maybe sometimes 40% conversion rates for new users to returning traffic. And so out of 3 million, you could expect to get up to 1 million new users. So the nice thing about this metric is that it's very simple to measure, so it's also very simple to see how you're improving on it, and the effects are fast. So the basic argument here is that Shockwave Player was 58% penetration on the market installed already versus Flash 96%. So that's out of million users, 300,000 don't have the technology, or they do have the technology. So that's pretty easy. Out of 3 million, we could convert one more million. Even accounting for the fact that some people are not going to like it, we'd still look at 100,000 to 300,000 new converted users. The second metric, retention rate. So this is a complex metric to actually measure because it's not really a ratio and a rate. It's a flow metric. So superficially speaking, you could define it as people that visited your service in the last month. How many visit this month as well? The problem with that definition is that months are not even, and most importantly, some months have 4 weekends, some months have 5 weekends, and that's a major thing for an entertainment service. But and of course, you might be interested in some other period than a month. But anyway, you want to measure that because that will help you determine how many new users you have to get every month to replace who churned out. And the other interesting thing about this metric is that it's, even if you change it by just a little bit in either direction, it will add up over time. So it's a hard metric to change, but it's a very important one to keep your eye on. So we also expected to see some improvement on retention rate simply from changing technology, because Flash is slightly faster. It's slightly more enjoyable to use, and people would spend more time with the important bit, which is other users and social play. And finally, monetization rate. So the industry talks about ARPU and defines it as average revenue per either every player or as per paying player. Sometimes some people talk about lifetime sales. So there's several different ways of how do you define the base from which you calculate the metric and how long a period you're looking at. But every time we talk about averages. And the funky thing about the average in this particular case is that if you are a free-to-play pay for stuff like we are, your median is 0 spend. Your average is something else, of course, because someone does spend something. But averages are really, really misleading, because most of your user base is going to pay a really small amount of money, and some people are going to spend enormous amounts of money. So it makes a whole lot more sense to look at a distribution. Of course, it's not as easy to communicate, and it's not that easy to track as an average, but still you want to pay attention to your distribution of spending instead of the average. So simply changing the technology did absolutely nothing to monetization rates for us, and we didn't expect it to. What we did expect is that after we switched technologies, we would have a more productive base on which to create features, and that definitely did happen. So basically, the reason why you want to have these 3 metrics and not some other metric is that will allow you to forecast what's going to happen next. So the simplified version of the math is your new traffic times your conversion rate applied over the retention rate over the months times your monetization rate, and hey, that's your revenue. Of course, you do want to measure other things. You want to go into more detail on each particular segment of that metric base. But that will basically be able to tell, that's your forecasting tool. So you're not hand-waving your revenue, you're actually calculating it out of how much money are you going to spend on traffic acquisition. So how did it work for us? 2008 is, and half of 2009 is when we were doing the changes to our technology. We were on a fairly good growth track thanks to the changes we had done in 2007 and 2008. But definitely you can see a rate improvement at the end of the chart as we change the technologies. So 2009, we completed the year on 21% traffic improvement year on year versus 2008. So that's pretty good. Monetization hadn't gone anywhere, like I said, and 2009 was a difficult year for I think most of the market. also was a difficult year for us in terms of sales. But after we got technology out and good focus on features again, and launched several monetization focused features, we also saw monetization improve significantly, and we're gonna post very soon now quarterly results of 25% improvement on year-on-year revenues to approximately $20 million this first quarter of this year. So we're pretty happy about that. The details are going to be on our blog on sulake.com later, maybe this week, maybe next week. So that's the basics of ROI. So regarding the technology transitions, this was a pretty significant piece of work for us. We had estimated that we'd spent about 12 man-years on developing the client only, not including any of the server technologies and so forth, over the years, and that we would have to re-implement half of it. Half was maintenance, half was development, and we would have to re-implement all of that. So, and we had already tuned our company to work on less than one month cycle. At that time, we were working on 1 month cycle, and during the transition, we also tuned our company to work on 2 week and less cycles. And we would also only plan a couple of months ahead, so it was difficult to plan for something that would take a year. Well, we were expecting it to take about 8-9 months, and we would definitely have to face it somehow to work on our process, because we did not want to create one mammoth project. So there were some clear phases. We would have to do a new core client with the basic architecture in place. This would be fairly simple because we had a pretty good architecture for the old client, even if it was bad code due to Shockwave. But we could copy the architecture. Then we'd have to write every feature again. We'd have to create new tools for testing, create a new asset production pipeline that was compatible with the old assets that we wanted to keep. I mean, the point was to only change the technology and not change the content. And we would also have to develop a new deployment pipeline with new tools in there as well. So quite a lot of stuff to do, and we did expect to gain significant production efficiencies in the end by doing new tools, but of course we would have to first do the tools. So it would take a long time, and not only did we face the work in terms of what are we working on, but we also faced the development teams. So first of all, we started with a very small team working on the core client only. We work on very small teams in general, anything from 3 to 6 people in a team, never more than 7. So a very small team worked on the core client for the first couple of months. And then we started to transition more people onto new teams for developing features, and transition people out of the Shockwave teams. And a couple of months before we launched, we left only a small maintenance team in place, because we would be running both clients. And of course, if something does happen, we need to be able to fix the Shockwave client as well. So what this allowed us was that we could continuously, basically every month, reassess on do we need to do some more features to the Shockwave side and keep our players happy in the short term, or can we prioritize moving faster on the rewrite? And that kept the business at least level, if not a bit growing, all through the transition. So I already mentioned, but the other crucial thing was that we decided to do the whole thing side-by-side compatible. So we would use the same exact server and same exact protocol for both clients. And in fact, that meant that we would have to spend first half of the project rewriting the Shockwave client, because we wanted to refactor the server-side protocol, and we did not want to maintain the old protocol with the Flash client. And we did not want to create 2 protocols, because that would be hard to test. This was certainly not obvious at the beginning. There was seemingly a lot of waste in having to rewrite both clients when we want to just get rid of one of them. But the clear payoff was in testing. We would be able to run both clients side by side, have users using both clients in the same rooms, playing with each other, and just compare the screens. Do they look the same? And as long as they do and no one notices what client the other people are using, then we're doing the right job. And it created us a huge amount of confidence. Especially further along we got in the project, and we could show to our board that, hey, this is the new client. By the way, you're watching it live. The people you're seeing are using the old client, but this is the live server, and you're seeing the new technology working. And same goes for the development teams. They would not have to deal with the unknown factor of what happens in the live server once we deploy it, because they were seeing the live server all along. So that also permitted us to do a parallel deployment. When we did take it live to the users, we would also be able to continue using both clients. And finally, we decided that we would do no new features over the core transition period. We would only improve the UI. Of course, there would be some things that were enabled by technology, like we could do higher performance graphics, and we could do scaling of the rooms. We could do scaling of the client to any size screen, whereas the old client was hard-coded to fit to a 800 by 600 screen, and if you had a bigger screen, that's the tiny window you get. Well, we would do no new features, and we could do the features later. We would deploy this client and then add the features that users want, instead of trying to add them to the critical path before the switch. So schedule-wise, like I said, we were expecting it to take 8, 9, 10 months of development and launch in the first quarter of last year. Turned out that it actually did take 13 months of work, and we could launch it in May in a private beta. Again, because we could do a parallel deployment, we would be able to show this new client to a very small beta test group that help us get feedback from actual live users, select what are we going to finish, and what features are absolutely crucial in the launch. And also they would help us take the word out that we are going to have a better client soon. It's much better always to get your users to market for you instead of doing it yourself. So yeah, phase deployment of the beta, private in May, then open beta in June and July. Then during the open beta, we set it to default for every user, kept the old client going though, and then ultimately closed the Shockwave client at the end of October. So 18 months after we started development seriously, we would complete the project. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it was the new features developed for the Flash client only that sold everyone to the switch. So from the very beginning, when we opened this to open beta, we would see about 1/3 to 1/2 of the users voluntarily picking the Flash client instead. But there's the old user base that is used to the old client and is happy with the idiosyncrasies it has. And they would want to keep the old version. We still get complaints, as anyone running a community, you get complaints that they want the old version back. But they're still playing and they're still complaining, so that's a good thing. So final evaluation, even though it took us longer than we planned, it was definitely a resounding success for us, and really it was all due to deciding to do it iteratively and face both the features and the development teams over the entire project, and not trying to plan a waterfall all through. because that allowed to reprioritize when we needed to, and we did need to. There were situations during the year that we needed to pull developers back to the Shockwave client and do something else, because we would have to make sure that sales don't drop. And you just need to keep reinventing yourself in this business. The second thing was the parallel deployment. We would not have these abrupt points where it either works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you're screwed. We would always be able to go back. And of course, we did have an experienced team that we had to retrain to do Flash instead of Shockwave, but they knew what they were doing. So of course, you can't underestimate that either. So yeah, very, very high success, but that doesn't mean that by the time that we were 3 months over the original deadline, we weren't pretty stressed out about getting it done, but it got done. So definitely do iteratively and parallel if you need to do something like that. So a few words about the other platform shift that happened in the same time as we were busy with the technology platform shift. There was some other platform shift going on the market, and that was Facebook. So it's kind of ironic that we had positioned ourselves as doing a social play, and while we're working on something very internal to us, social gaming comes up, and they hijack the term. Habbo is a very social structure, so it's kind of funny that we aren't the social game. What is a social game? Well, this is the Facebook context. People don't spend enormous lengths of time playing on Facebook. They go to Facebook for 2 minutes, check what their friends are up to, maybe play something, and then log off. And one of the it's not just only the time you spend there at a time, but the crucial thing here is that even if you have 100 friends logging on to Facebook every day as you do, you are still probably going to miss them, because you're there 2 minutes, then they come on, and they log off and you come back and you weren't there. So the successful social game on Facebook is a parallel single player experience. You play it for 2 minutes, you see your friends playing, but you never see them actually playing. You see the results. So you get to observe, but you don't get to play along. Versus Habbo, which is like I said, it's a social structure, and the games are created by the users. So instead of trying to explain that, let me just show you a quick video of what does that actually mean. I have a few here. Let's begin with role-playing a hospital. So, I'm sorry, let's put this full screen. Maybe. Not. So what happens here is people have recreated a hospital where they actually serve the patients. Every one of their playing is a live person, and there is no game mechanics that we run. They are role-playing the whole thing. Some people are doctors, some people are patients, someone's checking patients in. But really impressive stuff comes out of Brazil. A social movie theater. Music maker machine that we created a few years ago called Tracks Player. I zoomed out so you can see the entire place. But they just come up with the weirdest stuff. And this keeps happening over and over again. I mean, this cinema thing is something that is apparently very, very popular in Brazil. I least not in this impressive form. But every community, of which we have several, and every language and every culture, they have their own things. This is a beach room. So Habbo Hotel is about hotel rooms, but they don't look like hotel rooms. Not really. Well, anyway, let's move on. So that's the social experience of the product. Where was I in the slides? So anyway, Habbo was sort of a walled garden. It happens in its own client, and though we had opened it up to the web a couple of years before, in some senses of the word, users would have their home pages and things that happen in Habbo would be visible to web. The rooms themselves aren't, and what happens in the rooms really isn't. So we've started to take some step on connecting Habbo to the social graph. So this is the very, very basic existing Habbo Facebook applications wall, and the Habbo itself is also on Facebook, and you click on the go to your application, and there it is. But I would be the first to admit that what we are doing on Facebook right now is really, really primitive, and most of the game companies there succeeding there are way more sophisticated than we are in this particular respect, and that's basically because we did this at the end of last year, and since then we've been focused on something completely different again. Namely, we've been merging our international communities together. So we used to have 5 different English-speaking services plus 11 other languages. We're merging all the 5 English-speaking services together, and let's see what happens then. But improving the Facebook application, of course, is important. Anyway, it seems that Facebook market has reached some sort of saturation point, and no one's really growing there anymore. We have about I think about 400 to 500,000 monthly active users, which makes us a mid-sized game there. But even the big ones aren't growing anymore, and small ones have really difficulties getting traction, other than by buying traffic, that is. If you've been following the news, it seems that everyone's realizing that tying yourself to some other person's platform and not having a fallback is a really bad idea. So we were not going to move Habbo to Facebook. We would be using it as a channel along every other channel that we have. But really the question is how do you put your game on Facebook? It's about how do you use the web to support your game or game-like real-time interactive experience in general, and what can you use from the web to make that better experience. And to me, the most important thing is that you no longer have to register to play a game and still get to have your identity and still get to have your social graph in the game. If you want to play with your friends, that's important. Even if you don't want to play with your friends, you still get the game will be better because it knows something about you. And then you get to the privacy argument. But I would say that the game would games that use this functionality responsibly are going to be better, are going to be more enjoyable than games that don't. So that's the big opportunity, to make it easier for players to get started playing. Especially when you have a global point of view, not everyone is really on Facebook. There are many other services that are important as well, but the big theme here is that you are able to use the graph. One thing that we as an industry still need to definitely work on is how do we communicate the privacy and trust thing to the players and have a trust between the player and us. And I would hope that everyone working on games in this world would follow certain set of ethics to not ruin it for everyone else. So the final topic for me today is really the economics of player-to-player markets. And this is a topic that I find particularly interesting, and I keep spending my time digging into this data. Of course, it's because Habbo has a lot of this economics happening, but it's also because observing what happens in the virtual space really maps well to what happens in real world as well, and you really get to understand something about people by observing what the data that you collect in a game system that collects a lot of data. So what's an economy? I would say that an economy needs to have value exchange between all participants. It's not enough to just sell virtual goods and have a virtual currency. That's a market for sure. That's something where you sell to users. But unless users can also participate and trade with each other, you don't have an economy. Typically virtual economies do have virtual currencies, and they come in many forms as well, but you have to be able to transfer value from player to player in order to have an economy. So what's Habbo's like? Well, from the very beginning, we didn't have a currency. We sold items to users by premium SMS. You would send a message and you would get an item, which would be a difficult tool to use because you could not do very cheap items and you could not do very expensive items because you only have the premium SMS. But we did already at that point allow people to move items from one account to another. So we did have something free already going on there. So then we introduced the Habbo coins as a currency, as a stored value that you buy and then use to buy the furniture or other virtual items. But we didn't enable moving the coins from one account to another. And like I said, we did already allow trading of the items. So what happened was that people would invent their own currency. Some common item would become the currency of the world. And although we sold Habbo coins, the regular players, the really active players, would actually value everything in terms of that other item. So in our case, that was we have this subscription feature called Habbo Club, and it keeps giving gifts to users that are club members. And the early gift was a sofa. You would get a sofa every month if you were a member. So we got a lot of sofas, and that would become the currency. You trade other stuff against club sofas, which is kind of weird, but that started to happen very early on, and it even included other people measuring the economy. So you can Google Habbo Fernie values and get a lot of sites other than ours, where the values of each Fernie are documented against the club sofas. Basically this allowed skilled, enthusiastic players who wanted to spend the time to become better and actually create quite a significant wealth for themselves virtual inside the game. So the next thing we did was we figured out that this is happening, that there is a currency on the market, but it's really hard to really observe, because what's the value for club sofas? For us, we are giving them away for free. So we started to measure this in serious way, and also enable trading of the coins themselves, so that we could make the official currency also the unofficial currency and have both markets work the same, use the same values. It would be easier for new users to communicate to and so forth. But we never denied users using any other mechanism of trading, so club sofa pricing still happens. And the sites that are documenting the Fernie values are now documenting the values in both coins and club sofas. several years after we did the switch. We also created recently a marketplace where you can post for sale notices for your stuff and have the trade happen even if you're not there. And essentially, we are training people to run shops. So I'm sure some of them will become shopkeepers later. I would hope that at some point we would actually get to a point where we can publish enough data so that we will be able to train commodities traders or whatever in the future, because these people they are learning to be really sophisticated with the functions that they have. So that's the interesting part, where you can draw corollaries to the real world and see how the behavior of a feature changes users. So in terms of business implications, it turns out that the player-to-player trading is by volume several times larger than the primary sales of us selling items to users. They would be trading the same item over and over from account to another. And of course it depends a bit on how do you actually measure what's an actual exchange of value, but we're estimating that it's about $500 million US worth of exchange every year in Habbo internationally. So the important bit for business-wise for us is that because the items move from player account to player account, they will remain active for longer than the account themselves, which becomes interesting in the accounting-wise, but it also becomes interesting in designing your features and running the operations of the product. Because especially if the traffic growth slows down, the world starts to fill up. The old items are still there, and people can satisfy their demand by just using the old items, and they won't have to buy more. So if we didn't do anything to counteract this, what would happen is that we would have to redesign everything over and over and introduce new stuff all the time just to keep the basic sale level happening. And we don't have an unlimited amount of designers to do this, and we already have 13,000 different items in 90 lines of stuff. So we kind of want to use that inventory. So we need to control the fill-up factor somehow. So what we do is, well, there are 3 different alternatives that you could basically do. You could not allow trading, but then you don't have a market, and you don't have an economy, and you don't get the benefits of the $500 million trade stuff. There would be no collectible value for the items, and that would not make them interesting for the players. We do use that model very select cases. You could make items wear out or disappear. You could essentially rent items instead of sell them. Again, you would have no market for them, because there just is no sense in buying trading something from the secondary market if you know that it's going to disappear in 1 day instead of 30. But it does make sense for some items, like we are now essentially renting clothes. The club members get a far larger catalog of stuff that they can select to be their avatar accessories, and it works for that. But for most of our virtual items, in particular those that we can let people trade, they are durable, ageless. You buy it, it doesn't go away. And for this part of the market, what we did was create a system that gets small, tiny fees out of the secondary trading. That could be a cost to place a for sale notice on the market, or it could be a commission for securing the exchange, making sure that both sides of the exchange happens and no one's scamming you. It could be fees in currency conversion. It could be anything. We've experimented with quite a lot of different things here, but essentially, just by taking 1% of value out of the system in every trade and have a market that is 10 times bigger than your primary market, you got 10% more revenue. Or at least you're creating 10% more value into your sales cycle. So that's a significant business revenue contributor for sure, but it's also the really important bit of it is that it helps manage the inflation of the system. Because there is now some friction in terms of moving items from account to account, you don't get the factor of everything moves to the active accounts and nothing ever goes away. And controlling inflation is, I guess, something that everyone by now should be really, really clear on. It's a good thing. We've certainly seen it in Europe in the last couple of weeks. So I showed this chart earlier on in the presentation, but here's it's in a bigger form. So this particular chart is actual data of number of accounts versus amount of time they spend over 4 different segments of casual people, regular visitors, people who buy stuff, and people who buy a lot of stuff. And this is essentially demonstrates that most of the time is spent by people who are your really, really important customers. But I could put basically any other measure in there for the orange bars, and it would basically remain the same. Well, if I put money spent there, clearly it would be 0 except for the last 2 columns, because that's customers, not customers. But you could put trading there, it would look the same. You could put gaming there, it would look the same. You could put number of events created for other players and number of activities run by these players, it would look the same. So the important factor here is that basically whatever is the measure of activity in your service, you will find that a very small percentage of the player base does most of it. And this is why the averages are so bad. You really want to address the small percentage of the user base that really does everything. Of course, yeah, we say that we have 16 million users every month. Clearly, not all of the 16 million are spending the enormous amounts of time. Actually, 95% of the time spent comes out of 1/2 of the user base. So, time for conclusions. If you are doing big changes on your technology and platform base, really do it iteratively and plan for doing a parallel deployment. It really pays off. If you're doing a web game or any service model stuff instead of a box product, you really have to focus on 3 basic measurements. You have to measure more of this, but this is the cornerstone of your measurement model: conversion, retention, and monetization. And if you have a secondary market in the system, really do take the time to model it, understand it, try to understand the economics of who are the big spenders in there and what are they doing and what are they getting out of it. And look for emergent behavior that you didn't think of when you designed the system, because it will be there. And definitely invest in analysis resources if you can. So that's pretty much it. That's the timeline of Habbo's history in a short form. But any questions? We have about 10 minutes. Yes?
What's the age range of your heavy users?
The core demographic of Habbo is 13 to 16, and I've actually not looked at the heavy users' age range in particular, but I would expect it to be the same. We have a distribution ranging, I mean, of course, in the most of the English-speaking markets, and definitely in the US market, because of COPPA regulations, we have to limit it at 13 and up. But we have some markets where we have a younger audience. We have some markets like Brazil where we have a significantly older audience for whatever reason. It's a bit of a cultural thing. But most of it is focused on 13 to 16, and that's most of the activity as well. Yes?
Among your heavy users, is it typically a linear correlation between time spent and money spent? Like if you Or is there like a plateau where at some point, nobody spends, even if they spend 24 hours a day, they don't spend more than X dollars?
Well, it's not a linear correlation because, like you said, there are limits. You can't spend more than 24 hours a day. It's just physically impossible. And teenagers do have a limit on how much money they have to spend as well. But there is a significant positive correlation to money spent and time spent and trading activity and pretty much anything you could imagine. But it's non-linear. Yes.
Is it critical to your business to make a heavier investment in connecting the external social graphs like Facebook, or are you still more focused on what you're building internally outside of Habbo itself?
I would say that it's definitely crucial to have some sort of connection to the outside world because that's user acquisition is driven by the social graph outside of Habbo. We survey our users and when we ask them offline or online, but outside of the game environment, where did you learn about Habbo for the first time? 80% of them tell that they learned it from a friend, on a schoolyard, somewhere, not online, but they learned it from a friend. So clearly viral word of mouth is very, very important for user acquisition. But that doesn't keep anyone playing. That has to be in the game. So conversion and user acquisition, it's the social networks and actually keeping them playing internal features.
So for those 13 to 16-year-olds, how much of a social graph do they have online? Or is that much more to say person to person?
For us, it's been person to person. I don't know if it's because we don't have good enough online features for that, or whether they just talk to each other on the schoolyard.
So given your audience is so small, so young, during development, before you get the project and the open beta, who is the voice of the customer? Who's going to sell it?
Very good question. We run panels on multiple markets, recruit people both from the player base, existing player base, and also from people who are not playing Habbo but are of the right age range, and talk to them in person, organize focus groups and.
So you do usability even before the open beta or the private beta?
Yeah, but we're not focusing so much on usability as the motivations of the players. Usability is at the end very easy to test compared to playability and funness. Yes?
Do you see a correlation between the number of friends someone may have with the amount of money they spend? So if someone has more friends, they might be able to spend more money with Habbo?
I wouldn't say that correlation is very strong. However, there is an interesting correlation on the number of friends and number of interactions a person has and how much influence they have on spending of the other players. Well, I think we're running out of time, so thank you. Hope you got something out of it.